What happens
We're
in
on the
this
place
courtroom
now
will
on the
shake
B.
viewers to their core. A woman walked in ready for war and walked out forever changed. This is the story of Judge Frank Caprio's most explosive case, where one entitled woman learned the hardest lesson of her life. And it's all caught on record. 45-year-old Karen Mitchell burst through those courtroom doors like a hurricane of rage. She was armed with designer accessories, a parking ticket, and an attitude that could cut steel. She had no idea she was about to collide with the one man in Providence who wouldn't flinch at her fury. Judge Frank Caprio was about to deliver a lesson so powerful, so devastating in its calm brilliance, that witnesses would later call it the greatest display of judicial authority they'd ever seen. But what Karen did in those first 60 seconds, it made every person in that courtroom hold their breath in shock. Before this story unfolds, before viewers witness the transformation that left an entire courtroom in tears, hit that subscribe button. Because what Judge Caprio does to dismantle entitlement, word by surgical word, is something every American needs to see. The lesson he teaches works in boardrooms, living rooms, and every corner of society where respect has been forgotten. Drop a comment with the city viewers are watching from New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami, or anywhere across this nation, because Judge Caprio's wisdom transcends geography. This isn't just about parking tickets. This is about the epidemic of entitlement poisoning American culture, and one judge's mission to cure it with nothing but truth, dignity, and unshakable authority. November's gray afternoon cast shadows through the windows of Providence Municipal Court. The courthouse hummed with its usual rhythm, nervous defendants, shuffling papers, the low murmur of justice being administered one case at a time. Judge Frank Caprio, the legendary judge whose wisdom had touched millions through viral videos, worked through his docket with practiced efficiency. At exactly 2:15 p.m., the bailiff's voice cut through the murmur. Case number 47B, Karen Mitchell versus the City of Providence, parking violations, multiple unpaid citations. The doors swung open. Karen Mitchell didn't walk into that courtroom. She invaded it. Designer handbag swinging like a weapon, heels striking the floor with aggressive percussion, arms locked across her chest in a posture that screamed defiance. Her face, twisted into an expression of pure contempt, told everyone present exactly what she thought of this waste of her time. The temperature in the room dropped. Court officers exchanged knowing glances. The other defendants, waiting their turn, suddenly looked grateful. They weren't about to face Judge Caprio with that attitude. Even the stenographer's fingers hesitated above the keys, sensing the storm about to break. Karen's body language was a declaration of war. Jaw clenched, eyes blazing, every muscle radiating a message. I don't belong here, and someone is about to pay for making me come. The facts of her case were damning. 7 parking tickets across 6 months. Not random mistakes or honest oversights. Deliberate, repeated violations. Handicapped spaces. Those sacred spots reserved for citizens who navigate life in wheelchairs, who struggle with mobility, who need those extra feet of access just to function. Karen parked there like they were her personal VIP spots. Fire lanes, those clearly marked zones where emergency vehicles need split-second access to save lives. Karen treated them like complimentary parking while she grabbed her coffee. Expired meters, repeatedly. As if the rules governing shared public space simply didn't apply to someone of her importance. 7 citations, 7 times the law reached out to her. 7 times she crumpled the ticket and threw it away like yesterday's trash. 7 court summons. 7 official notices requiring her appearance. 7 legal documents she ignored with the casual dismissal of someone who'd never faced a real consequence in her life. Until today. Today, a warrant had been issued. The law had finally caught up with the woman who thought she could outrun it forever. But here's what made this case truly explosive. What turned it from a simple traffic violation into a cultural moment that would be replayed across America. Karen Mitchell had lived 45 years without ever truly being held accountable for anything. She'd learned early that volume equals victory, that intimidation works, that if she yelled loud enough, demanded hard enough, threatened aggressively enough, the world would bend to her will. Managers would cave, service workers would back down, friends and family would just let it go. She had become a master of getting her way. And she had no idea, absolutely no concept, that she was about to meet the immovable object to her unstoppable force. Before the fireworks begin, before viewers witness what happens when entitlement slams headfirst into wisdom, a question for every American watching. Have they ever encountered a Karen? Someone who believes the rules are for other people. Someone who weaponizes their voice and their privilege to avoid consequences? Comment below about how that situation was handled. Because Judge Caprio is about to deliver a masterclass that should be taught in every school, workplace, and home in America. Judge Caprio reviewed the file before him, his reading glasses perched on his nose. 79 years of life experience. Decades on the bench. Thousands of cases. He'd seen every type of defendant. The genuinely remorseful, the financially desperate, the accidentally negligent, the habitually reckless. But Karens? They were their own category, and he knew exactly what was coming. Ms. Mitchell, Judge Caprio began, his voice carrying the gentle authority that had made him beloved across America. I see here that... Let me tell you, something! Karen's voice exploded through the courtroom like a sonic boom. This whole thing is ridiculous. Those tickets are a scam. The city is just trying to steal money from hardworking people. The courtroom collectively flinched. Several defendants literally recoiled in their seats. The bailiff's hand instinctively moved toward his belt, decades of training screaming that this situation could escalate. But Judge Caprio, he didn't move a muscle, didn't interrupt, didn't show even a flicker of irritation on his weathered face. He simply watched, observing, studying, letting Karen dig her own grave with words. I pay taxes! Karen's voice climbed another octave, her finger now jabbing toward the bench. I pay your salary! Those parking spots were empty. Nobody was using them. And now I'm being harassed like some kind of criminal over parking. Her performance was spectacular in its entitled fury. Arms flailing, voice cracking with indignation, face flushed red. Every word dripping with the absolute certainty that she was the victim in this scenario. This is a money grab. You people sit up there in your robes judging hard-working Americans who are just trying to live their lives. Still, Judge Caprio remained motionless. A Buddha of judicial patience, his eyes, those legendary eyes that had seen through thousands of stories and excuses, never left her face. Not with anger, not with judgment, just watching, waiting for the storm to exhaust itself. And another thing, Karen was building to her crescendo, preparing to deliver what she clearly thought would be her knockout blow. Ms. Mitchell, Judge Caprio's voice, cut through her tirade like a scalpel. Not loud, not angry, but carrying an authority so absolute that Karen's mouth actually snapped shut mid-sentence. The silence that followed was deafening. Judge Caprio leaned forward, his elbows on the bench. When he spoke, his voice carried across the courtroom with the weight of earned authority. Not demanded, not shouted, but simply present. Ms. Mitchell, I'm going to give you a choice. The words hung in the air like a judge's gavel waiting to fall. You can continue with this behavior, this disrespectful, inappropriate display, and I will hold you in contempt of court. That means tonight you'll spend the evening in a jail cell, thinking about how you speak to people. Karen's eyes widened, the first crack in her armor. Or... Judge Caprio paused, letting the alternative breathe. You can compose yourself. Show the proper respect that these proceedings, and your fellow citizens in this room, deserve. and we can address your case like the adults we're supposed to be." "Are you threatening me?" Karen found her voice again, but it lacked the earlier conviction. "You can't put me in jail for speaking the truth. This is America. I have rights." "You absolutely have rights, Ms. Mitchell." Judge Caprio's voice remained steady as bedrock. "But those rights come with responsibilities. And somewhere along the way, you seem to have forgotten that part." What happened next became legendary in judicial circles. Judge Caprio stood, his 79-year-old frame rising with surprising authority, and walked around the bench. Not aggressively, not theatrically, just approaching the situation with the patience of a teacher about to deliver a lesson that will change everything. "Let me explain something to you, Ms. Mitchell. Something that apparently no one else in your life has been willing to say." The courtroom held its collective breath. "Your behavior right now, it's not the behavior of someone exercising their rights. It's the behavior of someone who believes they're above the law, above the rules that govern the rest of us, above accountability." Karen opened her mouth to protest. Judge Caprio held up one hand, a simple gesture, but carrying such quiet authority that Karen actually stopped mid-breath. "You mentioned that you pay taxes and therefore pay my salary. That's correct, but let me tell you what paying taxes doesn't do, Ms. Mitchell. It doesn't exempt you from following the same laws everyone else follows. It doesn't give you the right to park in handicapped spaces. And it certainly doesn't give you the right to walk into this courtroom and treat people with contempt." The judge's voice grew stronger, not louder, but carrying more weight with each word. "Those handicapped spaces you used for your convenience? Let me tell you about them." Judge Caprio moved back to his bench, pulling out documentation from Karen's file. When he spoke, his words were surgical strikes of reality. "Those spots are reserved for people with disabilities, people who need closer access to buildings because walking extra distance isn't just inconvenient for them. It's genuinely difficult, sometimes painful, sometimes impossible." He let that sink in for 3 full seconds. "When you park there illegally, Ms. Mitchell, you're not just breaking a law. You're forcing someone in a wheelchair, someone who already faces challenges you can't even imagine, to park farther away, to struggle across a parking lot, to miss an appointment because they couldn't access a building." For the first time since entering the courtroom, Karen's aggressive posture wavered, just slightly, but it was visible. "Those fire lanes you blocked," Judge Caprio continued, his words picking up momentum, like a closing argument to a jury. "They're marked as fire lanes because emergency vehicles need immediate access. Fire trucks, ambulances, vehicles carrying paramedics racing to save someone's life." His voice dropped to something almost conversational, which somehow made it more devastating. "When you block those lanes for your convenience, you're potentially delaying help from reaching someone having a heart attack, a child choking, a family trapped in a fire. Your coffee run could cost someone their life." The color was draining from Karen's face. Now, the reality, the actual human cost of her actions, was beginning to penetrate the wall of entitlement she'd built around herself. "And those expired parking meters? They exist to ensure fair access to limited parking spaces. When you ignore the time limits, you're taking spots away from other citizens, other taxpayers, other people trying to conduct their business in downtown Providence." Judge Caprio returned to his seat, his eyes never leaving Karen's face. "Tell me, Ms. Mitchell, according to this file, you own a successful real estate business. Is that correct?" "What does that have to do with anything?" Karen snapped, but her voice cracked. The defiance was crumbling. "Everything." Judge Caprio leaned forward. "As a business owner, you depend on laws to protect your property, to enforce your contracts, to maintain order in the marketplace. But you seem to believe those same laws shouldn't apply to you when they're inconvenient. The trap was closing. Tell me, if someone decided not to pay for a house you were selling because they felt your price was just a money grab, how would you respond? Karen started to answer, then stopped. Her mouth opened, closed. The connection was forming in her brain. The hypocrisy was becoming unavoidable. That's different. That's my business. No, Ms. Mitchell. Judge Caprio's voice was gentle now, almost compassionate. It's not different at all. Laws are society's business, and just like your business contracts, they apply to everyone equally. Viewers witnessing Judge Caprio systematically dismantle Karen's entitled worldview, piece by logical piece, are seeing a masterclass in leadership. This is how authority should work, not through volume or intimidation, but through unassailable logic and calm strength. Hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will show the true power of wisdom over aggression. Judge Caprio leaned back in his chair, his demeanor shifting from stern teacher to concerned elder. What he was about to do would be remembered by everyone in that courtroom for the rest of their lives. Ms. Mitchell, I want you to look around this courtroom. Karen's eyes reluctantly scanned the room. Do you see all these people waiting for their cases to be heard? Dozens of faces looked back at her. Some showed pity. Some showed judgment. All showed disappointment in what they'd witnessed. Every person here is dealing with their own legal issues, Judge Caprio continued. Some made honest mistakes. Some are facing genuine financial hardships. Some are here because life threw them circumstances they couldn't control. His voice took on an almost professorial tone, delivering wisdom that transcended the courtroom. But they all have one thing in common, Ms. Mitchell. They're showing respect. Respect for this process. Respect for their fellow citizens. Respect for the idea that we all live under the same rules. The words landed like hammer blows on an anvil. You stormed in here demanding special treatment, insisting that rules don't apply to you, showing complete disrespect for everyone present. Do you know what that behavior tells me? Karen didn't answer. Couldn't answer. The fight had drained out of her. It tells me that somewhere along the way, people stopped holding you accountable. People started letting you get away with things because confronting you was too exhausting, too loud, too much trouble. Judge Caprio stood again, his authority filling every corner of the room. And now you've reached middle age believing that raising your voice and making demands will get you whatever you want. But here's what I need you to understand. This courtroom represents something bigger than your convenience or your feelings. He paused, letting the weight settle. It represents the principle that we all live under the same rules. We all have the same responsibilities, and we all deserve to be treated with equal respect. When you parked illegally 7 times and ignored 7 citations, you weren't just breaking parking laws. Judge Caprio's voice grew stronger. You were declaring yourself above your fellow citizens. You were saying that your time, your convenience, your desires matter more than everyone else's. For the first time, the very first time, tears began forming in Karen Mitchell's eyes. The wall was crumbling. 45 years of unchecked entitlement was collapsing under the weight of one man's patient, devastating truth. Judge Caprio pulled out a photograph from his desk drawer, a picture of the courthouse steps crowded with citizens. Ms. Mitchell, every single day, hundreds of people come through this building. He showed her the photograph. Single mothers trying to resolve traffic issues so they don't lose their licenses and their jobs. Elderly people on fixed incomes scraping together money to pay fines. Young people learning that actions have consequences. He placed the photograph on the bench where she could see it. These people don't storm in making demands. They don't yell. They don't point fingers. They come in with humility, ready to accept responsibility, and work within the system. They understand something you're just learning today. What's that? Karen's voice was barely above a whisper now. Her aggressive posture completely dissolved. That being an adult means accepting that the world doesn't revolve around you. The words hung in the air like a benediction. It means recognizing that other people's needs matter as much as yours. It means understanding that respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn through how you treat others. Judge Caprio returned to his seat, his expression softening for the first time since Karen had entered. "Ms. Mitchell, I could fine you the full $340. I could add contempt charges for your behavior today. I could send you on your way, and you'd pay, and nothing would change." Karen looked up, confusion replacing her earlier defiance. "But I don't think that would teach you anything you don't already know by now." He pulled out a legal pad and began writing. "Instead, I'm going to give you an opportunity to prove that you've learned something today. I'm reducing your fines to $100. Karen's eyes widened in disbelief. "But there are conditions." "What conditions?" Her voice was respectful now, subdued, genuinely curious. "First, you're going to write a letter of apology to the parking enforcement officers whose job you made more difficult with your attitude and your actions." Karen nodded slowly. "Second, you're going to volunteer for 4 hours at the Downtown Disability Advocacy Center. You're going to learn firsthand why handicapped parking spaces matter. You're going to meet the real people affected by the choices you made." Tears were flowing freely now, but Karen was listening intently. "And third, Ms. Mitchell, you're going to come back to this courtroom in 30 days. And you're going to tell me what you learned about respect, responsibility, and being part of a community." Judge Caprio's eyes met Karen's directly, and in them she saw not judgment, but hope. "Can you do that?" Karen nodded, unable to speak through the emotions overwhelming her. "What's happening in this courtroom isn't just justice, it's alchemy. The transformation of a human being from entitled to enlightened, witnessed by dozens of people who will carry this story with them forever. This is why Judge Caprio has become an American icon. This moment right here." Before Karen could leave the courtroom, Judge Caprio called her back one more time. "Ms. Mitchell, before you go today, I want you to understand something important." She turned, eyes red but alert. "The person who walked into this courtroom 30 minutes ago was someone who had forgotten how to be part of a community. But the person standing before me now has the potential to be a positive force for others." His words were no longer corrections. They were blessings. "Your business success tells me you're intelligent and capable. Your emotional response to my words tells me you have a conscience that just needed to be awakened. These are gifts, Ms. Mitchell." He paused for effect. "The question is, how will you use them?" Karen wiped her eyes, her transformation visible to every single person watching. "Your Honor, I don't know how I became so entitled. Somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking about other people. I stopped seeing beyond my own convenience. I stopped caring about how my actions affected anyone but me." "Recognition is the first step toward change," Judge Caprio responded gently. "But change requires action. It requires choosing to be different every single day. Not just today when you're embarrassed, not just tomorrow when the lesson is fresh, but every day for the rest of your life." He stood and addressed the entire courtroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've witnessed something important today, something rare. You've seen that it's never too late for someone to learn, to grow, and to choose to be better." His voice carried the wisdom of decades. Ms. Mitchell's journey from anger to understanding reminds us all that we have the power to change, if we're willing to listen, learn, and put others before ourselves. He turned back to Karen. "Ms. Mitchell, I want you to know that I believe you can become someone who makes your community better, rather than someone who demands special treatment from it. When you return in 30 days, I don't want to hear about what you learned in theory. I want to hear about how you've changed your behavior." Judge Caprio's eyes held hers with grandfather-like warmth. I want to know about moments when you chose patience over anger, service over self-interest, respect over demand. Can you show me that? Yes, Your Honor. Karen's voice was steady now, committed. I promise you I will. As Karen prepared to leave, she turned back one final time. Your Honor, can I ask you something? Of course. How do you stay so patient? How do you deal with people like I was, without losing your temper? Judge Caprio smiled, the first time he'd smiled during the entire proceeding. It transformed his face from stern judge to compassionate grandfather. Ms. Mitchell, I stay patient because I remember that every person who comes before me is someone's child, someone's parent, someone's neighbor. Everyone deserves the chance to be their best self. He looked at her with genuine warmth. Today, you chose to be yours. The entire courtroom erupted in spontaneous applause. Not sarcastic, not mocking. Genuine appreciation for witnessing authentic human transformation. Even the hardened court officers, veterans who'd seen everything, were visibly moved. Some had moisture in their eyes. All wore expressions of profound respect for what their judge had just accomplished. As Karen walked toward the exit, several people stopped her, not to condemn, to congratulate, to shake her hand, to acknowledge the courage it takes to admit you were wrong and commit to being better. This is why Judge Frank Caprio is legendary. This is why millions of Americans have watched his videos. This is why his name has become synonymous with wisdom, patience, and transformative justice. He didn't just handle a difficult person. He didn't just maintain order in his courtroom. He transformed a human being who could have remained bitter, entitled, and isolated for the rest of her life. This is what real leadership looks like in America. Not yelling, not dominating, not crushing people beneath the weight of authority, but lifting them up with truth, accountability, and the unwavering belief that people can change. 30 days later, on a crisp December morning, Karen Mitchell returned to Providence Municipal Court. But the woman who walked through those doors bore almost no resemblance to the entitled, aggressive person who'd stormed out a month earlier. She moved with quiet dignity. Her clothing was understated, professional without ostentation. She carried a folder, but more importantly, she carried herself with the humility of someone who had genuinely learned something profound. When her name was called, Karen approached the bench with a small, genuine smile that transformed her entire countenance. Ms. Mitchell, Judge Caprio began warmly, tell me about your month. Karen took a deep breath. Your Honor, I need to start by saying that 30 days ago, you saved me from myself. I was becoming someone I never wanted to be, and I didn't even realize it. She opened her folder with careful hands. I wrote letters of apology to every parking enforcement officer in the downtown district. But more than that, I met with Sergeant Rodriguez, their supervisor. I learned about the challenges they face every day, people yelling at them, threatening them, treating them like the enemy just for doing their jobs. Her voice grew stronger, more confident. I completed my volunteer hours at the Disability Advocacy Center. Your Honor, I met a woman named Mrs. Patterson. She uses a wheelchair. She told me about times when she couldn't get into buildings because someone like me, was parked illegally in handicapped spaces. Karen's eyes misted, but she pressed on. She missed a doctor's appointment once. Had to reschedule medical treatment because of it. When she told me that story, I realized that every time I parked illegally, I wasn't just breaking a rule. I was potentially hurting real people with real needs. Judge Caprio nodded, his expression showing genuine pride. But the biggest change, Your Honor, is in how I treat people every day. I used to get angry at slow cashiers, rude waiters, difficult clients. Now I try to remember that everyone is fighting battles I know nothing about. Tell me about a specific situation where you chose differently, Judge Caprio prompted. Last week, I was at the grocery store. A young mother was having trouble with her crying baby, and people were staring, making comments, rolling their eyes. Karen's voice held remembered shame. The old me would have been annoyed, impatient, maybe even made a comment myself. She paused, the memory clearly powerful. Instead, I went over and offered to help her carry her groceries. Told her I remembered those days when my kids were little. We talked while walking to her car. She started crying. Not because of the baby, but because she said I was the first person to be kind to her all week. Judge Caprio's eyes held unmistakable warmth. And in my business, Karen continued, I've completely changed how I treat clients. Instead of just trying to close deals and maximize commissions, I'm actually listening to their needs, helping them find homes that work for their families, even if it means smaller sales for me. She pulled out more documents from her folder. I've started volunteering regularly at the Disability Center. I'm working with Sergeant Rodriguez to create a community awareness program about parking enforcement and why these rules actually matter. Karen's hands were trembling slightly as she pulled out her final offering. And, Your Honor, I brought something to show you. These are thank you notes from people whose lives I've tried to make a little better this month. Not because I had to, not because of court orders, but because I wanted to. Judge Caprio examined the notes. Handwritten letters from various community members expressing gratitude for Karen's kindness, help, and changed attitude. His expression showed something rare in a courtroom, genuine pride. Ms. Mitchell, 30 days ago, you were angry at the world and demanding special treatment. Today, you're contributing to your community and thinking about others first. He set the notes down gently. What would you say to someone who's in the position you were in a month ago? Karen thought carefully, her answer clearly coming from deep reflection. I would tell them that being angry and entitled is the loneliest way to live. When you demand that the world revolve around you, you end up in a very small world, with just yourself in it. Her voice carried hard-won wisdom. But when you start thinking about others and contributing to your community, your world becomes bigger, richer, more meaningful. You stop being isolated and start being connected. And that connection is what makes life worth living. Judge Caprio stood slowly, his 79 years evident, but his presence still commanding. Ms. Mitchell, you've proven that transformation is possible at any age, in any circumstances. You've shown that taking responsibility isn't about punishment. It's about growth, about becoming who you were meant to be. He extended his hand to Karen, not as judge to defendant, but as one human being honoring another's journey. Your fines are dismissed. Your community service is complete. But more importantly, you've gained something worth far more than the money you would have paid. Karen took his hand, tears streaming freely now. You've gained the respect of yourself, and that, Ms. Mitchell, is priceless. The story of Karen Mitchell's transformation didn't end in that courtroom. It spread throughout Providence like wildfire. Then across Rhode Island. Then across America as the video went viral, touching millions. Local news interviewed Karen 6 months after her court appearance. By then, she had expanded her volunteer work exponentially. She'd completely restructured how she ran her business, focusing on genuinely helping families rather than just maximizing profits. She'd become a different person, or rather, she'd become the person she was always capable of being. Judge Caprio didn't just change my behavior, Karen told reporters, her voice steady and sincere. He changed my heart. He showed me that being part of a community means caring about more than just yourself. It means seeing other people's struggles. It means using your privilege and your resources to lift others up, not to elevate yourself above them. Mrs. Patterson, the wheelchair user Karen had met during her community service, provided perhaps the most powerful testimony. Karen has become one of our most dedicated volunteers, she told reporters. She understands now that accessibility isn't just about ramps and parking spaces. It's about dignity. It's about inclusion. It's about recognizing that people with disabilities are full members of this community who deserve respect and consideration. Judge Caprio, when later interviewed about the case, offered his own reflection with characteristic humility. The goal of justice isn't to punish people into submission. It's to help them understand how their actions affect others and give them the tools to make better choices. His words carried the weight of decades of experience. Karen walked into my courtroom as someone who had forgotten how to be part of a community. She left as someone ready to help build that community. That's what real justice looks like. That's what transformation looks like. And that's why I do this job. 2 years after that November afternoon, Karen Mitchell stood at a podium in downtown Providence, announcing the establishment of the Second Chances Scholarship Fund, a program providing financial assistance to young people interested in public service, community advocacy, and accessibility rights. Judge Caprio taught me that leadership isn't about demanding respect, Karen told the assembled crowd, her voice carrying across the plaza. It's about earning respect through service to others, through putting the community before yourself, through recognizing that we're all connected. She paused, scanning the audience. I hope these young people will learn that lesson much earlier than I did. I hope they'll understand from the beginning what took me 45 years to figure out, that true success isn't measured by how much you accumulate for yourself, but by how much you give to others. In the crowd, Judge Caprio sat quietly, just another citizen attending a community event. But those who knew the story recognized the slight smile on his face, the satisfaction of a teacher watching a student not just learn a lesson but live it. Karen Mitchell's story is a mirror held up to modern American society. How many Karens walk among us? How many people have forgotten that living in a community means caring about more than just themselves? But more importantly, her story is proof that it's never too late. Never too late to change. Never too late to start thinking about others. Never too late to become someone who makes their community better, rather than someone who just takes from it. We all know people like the old Karen. People who seem entitled, who make demands, who think rules don't apply to them, who weaponize their privilege and their voice to get what they want. But we've also now seen that, with patience, wisdom, and firm authority, even the most difficult people can transform. Even those who seem unreachable can be reached. Even hearts hardened by decades of entitlement can be softened by truth spoken with love. Judge Frank Caprio's handling of Karen Mitchell demonstrates something every American needs to understand. True leadership isn't about winning arguments or putting people in their place. It's about helping people become their best selves while maintaining the standards that make communities work. It's about having the courage to hold people accountable while believing in their capacity to change. It's about speaking truth without cruelty, setting boundaries without crushing spirits, demanding respect while showing respect. This is the lesson that transcends courtrooms and parking tickets. This is the wisdom that builds stronger communities, healthier relationships, and better citizens. Share this story. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with someone who's struggling with difficult people. Share it with someone who's forgotten how to be kind. Comment below about a time when someone's patient teaching changed perspective, or about a moment when a hard lesson about respect and responsibility was learned. Judge Caprio's words echo across time. Everyone deserves the chance to be their best self. The question isn't whether people can change. The question is, will they choose to? And for those watching from anywhere across America, from bustling New York to sunny California, from the heart of Texas to the shores of Florida, remember this. The power to transform lives doesn't require a judge's robe or a courtroom bench. It requires wisdom, patience, the courage to speak truth with love, and the unwavering belief that people, all people, can be better than they are. Subscribe for more stories that show how wisdom, patience, and authority can transform lives and communities. Like this video if you believe in the power of education over punishment, growth over condemnation, second chances over final judgments, and remember Judge Caprio's final words to Karen Mitchell. Everyone deserves the chance to be their best self. Today, you chose to be yours. May we all make that same choice every single day.